What is up, guys? It is MMA Mafia coming at you with another video. Today we're going to be counting down the top 5 biggest what-ifs in MMA history. Now, if you guys like the video, please leave a like, subscribe, share the video, and comment. I'd like to start streaming soon, but I want to get a couple more people in here. So, I'm just going to get straight into it. First one is going to be honorable mention, Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think he could have been top 5. I don't know. This is why he's going to be an honorable mention. I don't know if he would have been champion, but I think he could have been top 5. He had a big hole in his game, which was his cardio, but I think that could have been improved on. And I wish we could have just got to see the fight between him and Max, him and Yair. Him and Emmett would be a good fight. Him versus Volkanovski. Missed out on all these fights in his career, but good on him. He left the fighting to become a doctor, which is pretty cool of him, but we never got to see him fight all the top guys at featherweight. We will never know how good he could have been and his potential and how far he could have gotten in the ranks, but he's going to be an honorable mention. And start off the list at number 5, we have Georges St-Pierre versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, this is one of the big fights that we missed out on as fans. We'll never get to see this fight. As you know, they're both retired. I think GSP really could have beat Khabib. I don't think it would have been as close as people think. I think the weight difference would really help GSP. He wasn't the biggest welterweight, but Khabib was dying to make 155. In his last fight, he literally missed weight. But they kept the fight going, which was ridiculous. Just holding on to that towel. But I think GSP had a great chance of beating Khabib, but we'll never get to see this fight. Khabib wanted GSP to come down to 155, which is just ridiculous. Like, GSP is not the biggest 170-pounder, but he wants to get GSP drained all the way down to 155. These Dagestanis want everything on their terms. It's ridiculous. There was talks of them being in a grappling match against each other, but it's just not the same as an MMA fight. The fight would have been huge. It would have been drew in a lot of numbers, and I would have loved to see all the Dagestani fans cope and cry in the comments after GSP whooped Khabib, but we'll never know what's going to happen in the fight. We'll never see it, which sadly, but that's going to be the number 5 spot. And at number 4, we have Nick Diaz. Now, we got robbed of seeing Nick Diaz prime in the UFC. He got suspended for the testing positive for marijuana, which is ridiculous, especially nowadays in the UFC where it literally doesn't matter at all. But he could have been champion in the UFC, in my opinion. He was a great fighter. In his prime, he was one of the best on the planet, which is crazy to think how far he could have gone. And I think he had amazing star power. He could have been one of the biggest fighters in the world. I think he could have been just as big as his brother, Nate. A lot of the casuals will think, looking back, they'll say, oh, Nate Diaz had a better career than Nick Diaz. He was the better Diaz brother. They haven't seen Nick in his prime. He had way better boxing than Nate in his prime. Better jiu-jitsu. He was a great fighter. I think he could have been champion in his prime, but we'll never know now. And it's sad also to see him try to come back and fight. He should be retired now. It's unfortunate how his career panned out and how we missed out in so many years, but it's a little too late for him now, unfortunately. But circling back to the star potential, I think he could have been just as big or bigger than his brother Nate, which is insane to think because Nate is probably one of the top 3 most popular fighters of all time. He could have had big fights on his table at welterweight or 185 in his prime. We missed out on all those. But Nick Diaz is going to be at the number 4 spot at the biggest what-ifs in UFC history. Coming in at number 3, Dominic Reyes. Now, it's really unfortunate how his career panned out in the last couple of years, but it was good to see him get a win over Dustin Jacoby. It was amazing to see that, but the biggest what-if is if JonJones didn't get that decision against him, which was insane. I thought Dominic Reyes clearly won that fight. Even Dana thought he won that fight, but now he's just glazing Jones again, which is pretty hilarious. JonJones might have not even moved up to heavyweight if he lost this fight. We could have got a rematch with Dominic Reyes. And maybe even if he got the decision against JonJones, he wouldn't have been on the skid he was on for the past couple of years. Because I feel like after he lost that decision to JonJones, I feel like his confidence and his spirit just broke after that. And maybe if he won that decision, he would have snowballed into having a long win streak. We never know what would happen after that fight if he got the decision, which is insane to think that Jon Jones got the decision. I thought Dominic Reyes clearly won that fight. And I think the rematch, if they rematch Jon Jones and Dominic Reyes after that fight, if Reyes won, that would have been one of the biggest fights in UFC history because we've never seen Jon Jones lose like that before. But, you know, we'll never get to know now. One of the biggest what-ifs in UFC history. And it's going to be at the number 3 spot. And coming in at the number 2 spot, we have GSP versus Anderson Silva. Now, this is one of the biggest what-if fights in the UFC history. It's crazy to think how we've never got this fight. They were the two GOATs of their generation, and we never got to see them square off. They were one division apart. This was such a big fumble by Dana, not getting this fight together. Even though I think GSP would have beat Anderson Silva pretty easily, I think he would have wrestled him, took him to the ground, probably submitted him in the early rounds, maybe round 3, round 4. A lot of people asked for this fight when they were both coming up, both in their prime in the UFC, but unfortunately we never got it. I think it would be a great fight. It's really interesting to see how GSP striking would match up with Silva's, and if Silva could stop the wrestling of GSP. I think this was a very compelling matchup that could have happened, but unfortunately we'll never know what would happen in this fight, and it's going to be the number 2 spot. Now, coming in as the biggest what if in UFC history, I have Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Now, I think this could have been one of the biggest fights in UFC history. To me personally, I was very hyped for this fight to happen, but unfortunately it never happened. I think Francis Ngannou could have knocked out Jon Jones, beat Jon Jones. It was such a compelling matchup. Jon Jones, especially knowing that Jon Jones didn't look as good as we thought he would at heavyweight, especially in the striking. Obviously, he took Ciryl Gane down and submitted him, but Ciryl Gane has zero grappling. I would have loved to see Jon Jones on the feet a little bit more. He looked a little rusty. And I think if that version of Jon Jones came back and fought Francis, I think Francis would have a great chance of beating Jon Jones and knocking him out. But we'll never get to know now. But this is one of the biggest fumbles in UFC history. This could have been such a great fight, such a big fight. A lot of people were very intrigued to see what would happen in this fight. Now, we saw Francis' game evolve with his wrestling. We've seen him stuff takedowns against Stipe in the second fight and get the finish. We saw him wrestle against Ciryl Gane. So it's really disappointing we never got to see this fight. But that is going to be the number 1 biggest what if in MMA history. Now, if you guys liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below what you guys would like to see next. But that's going to be it. I'll see you guys later. Peace.